Good morning and welcome to this meeting of Strategic and Technical Planning Committee on Friday, the 14th of March, 2025. For the benefit of the public attending today and watching on live stream, I'm Councillor Sari House, Chair of this committee, and my Vice Chair is Councillor Dave Bulwell. This meeting is being live streamed and will be available to view on the Council website after the meeting. By attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed, and can I remind everyone that when you are speaking, please speak directly into the microphone so that you can be clearly heard and seen. This planning committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited, and all attendees must comply with the ruling of the chair. They must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. And to support this, please switch off your mobile phones or put them into silent mode for the duration of the meeting. And those using Teams, please ensure microphones are on mute and your device volume is set to 0 to maintain audio quality. Only those who have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. No material is to be circulated to members of the committee. We have 3 applications to determine today, and the case officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak to address the committee in the following order: public against, public support, applicant or agent, town or parish council, and ward members. Each has 3 minutes. Following public speaking, the planning officer will have the opportunity to address any salient points they wish to clarify, and committee members will be given the opportunity to ask technical questions of the planning officers before moving into debate. When we go into councillor questions and debate, for the benefit of the public watching, can members state their name and ward when addressing the meeting? I will do my best to prompt that. Excellent. So, do we have any apologies?
So we've received apologies for absence from councillors Belinda Rideout, David Northam, Spencer Flower, Tony Coombs and Richard Crabb.
Thank you. Minutes have been circulated. Are we content for me to sign those as per the last meeting? I'll do that at the end of this meeting if members are happy with that. Do we have any declarations of interest? There's no declarations of interest. So I now turn to our members of the public. You have an opportunity to make your representation now, or you can make it after the item that you've come to speak about. Would you prefer to do it after the item has been spoken about, or would you like to speak ahead of the meeting?
Thank you, Chair. We'd like to speak after the officer's report.
Excellent. So our public speakers are speaking after their application has been heard. And we now look at our roll call. So we welcome today to the meeting elected members of this committee, officers and those supporting them, and our public speakers and members, elected members, but not in this committee. So I'm just going to go through officers who are presenting. So application agenda item number 5. Alistair, if you could just introduce yourself and who's supporting you today, please.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Alistair Bevan, Definitive Map Technical Officer. I'm joined today by Karen Mackay, Senior Definitive Map Technical Officer, and Vanessa Penny, Definitive Map Team Manager.
Thank you, Alistair. And then agenda item 6, Rob, if you could introduce yourself and who's supporting you today.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Rob McDonald, Lead Project Officer in the Northern Committee Area Team. I'm supported today by Hannah Smith, who is the Manager of the Northern Area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And agenda item 7 will be presented by Eleanor Goadseer, who will be attending virtually, but we have a plan B should that fail. Plan B, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Tony Cosgrove from the Minerals and Waste Planning Team.
Thank you. Excellent. So, Alistair, if I can hand over to you, if you'd like to make your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. It may take a while to load. Lots of photographs. This is a public path order application for a footpath diversion under Section 119 of the Highways Act 1980. It is being considered by committee due to an objection being made to the order. The location of the application is Compton Abbas Airfield in the parish of Compton Abbas. Shaftesbury is to the north and Blandford Forum to the south. The proposed diversion of footpath 11 is between points A and B, a route which directly crosses the live runway. The walked route, which is signed, crosses the runway more directly, is shown by the yellow line. The proposed diversion of footpath 11 is from A up to C, across beyond the end of the runway to D, and then back down to B. This is the current route of footpath 11. Standing at point A, looking towards the runway, the first section is contained within a post and barbed wire fence. Again, just beyond point A, looking towards the signage as you enter the airfield, the signage directs pedestrians across the runway by the shortest route. Now on the runway, looking back towards point A, directly on the runway, looking northwest towards point B. This is still on the runway, looking across north towards Shaftesbury. And then looking at point B, footpath 11 continues through the gap until it meets the parish boundary on the other side of the hedge and becomes a different route, which is N683. The proposed diverted route of footpath 11 is from point A along the hedge to point C, then across beyond the end of the runway to point D, and then back along the hedge to point B. So this is point A, just the other side of the post and barbed wire fence, looking towards point C. A little way along there's a line of vegetation which will be cleared next to the hedge to provide the 2.5 metre path width. This is the vegetation from the other side looking back towards point A. This is the section to be cleared. following the route along the hedge line to point C. This is the gate at point C. And now standing at point C, looking across the runway towards point D. Walking towards the runway, looking at point C, looking back towards point C from the end of the runway. Again, beyond the end of the runway, looking across to the west. Again, standing towards the end of the runway, looking back towards point C. And now we're looking at point D. And this is at point D, looking west, down towards point B. Further along the hedge line, looking towards point B. Looking back up to point D. I'm not sure if you can see in this photo, but there's a plane landing there, viewed from the safety of the proposed route rather than on the runway. At point B, is just at the end of the arrow there. I'd just like to talk a little bit about landscape enhancements. The landscape enhancements include the commitment, time and resource dependent, to replace stiles with kissing gates. These stiles are not on the diverted route, which is why there's a sort of time and resource dependent caveat to that. As the proposed route is along the hedge line, the post and barbed wire fence will be removed, along with a small stile that's on the end of that section. So views from the current and proposed route looking from the west, very similar views. And then a panoramic view from the current and proposed route looking towards the west. The proposed route is slightly elevated, so you get more expansive views to the west. We carried out a consultation on the application and received no objections. The order was made in August 2024. Once the order was made and advertised, we received one objection from Compton Abbas Parish Council. The order-making tests are covered in the order-making report, but in summary, the diversion must be in the interest of the landowner, which it is to improve safety. Also, the termination point should not be substantially less convenient, and the termination point in this case are on the current route. Going through the legal test for order confirmation. The legal test must be met, but because of the objection, the council was unable to confirm the order itself. The order is in the interest of the landowner, as it improves the safety for pedestrians, pilots, and other users of the airfield. The legal test is that the diversion would not result in a path that is substantially less convenient to the public. Objections were made on the length of the new route, the sight lines to landing aircraft in proximity to aircraft while performing stationary engine tests. The diversion, although longer, is at a gentle slope and takes a route around the end of the runway, has excellent sight lines to landing and departing aircraft, as is now some 80 metres away from the test area, therefore is not substantially less convenient. This slide shows the current route actually crosses where the taxiing aircraft go towards the end of the runway before they take off. So they taxi across the current route, whereas the proposed route takes pedestrians away from that. Before the aircraft take off, they perform a brief 30-second engine test. The current position is some 40 to 50 metres away from the path. There is a new proposed position that is now some 80 metres away from the path. So any prop wash, which is the backdraft generated by the propeller, is dissipated by the time it reaches the proposed route. Back to the legal tests. It is expedient to confirm the order having regard to the effect the diversion have on public enjoyment of the footpath of the whole. Objections mention the extra length in views. The route, although longer, affords the user expansive views to both the east and the west, and with improved safety makes for an enjoyable walk. The diversion would have no material effect on the land served by the current route or over which the new route runs. The diversion will have no adverse effect on agriculture, forestry, flora, fauna, and geological and physiographical features. The proposal affects the applicant's land only, and therefore no compensation would be payable under Section 28 of the Highways Act 1980. Officers consider that the legal tests have been met for confirming the diversion order. It is recommended, therefore, that the order should be submitted to the Secretary of State for determination and that the Council should support confirming the order. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Alistair. So we now move to the agent for this item, Jason Hammond, to speak. 3 minutes.
As I say, I'm Jason Hammond. I'm the General Manager of Compton Ives Airfield. I'm also in the CA, the accountable manager, therefore legally responsible for all air and ground safety within it. The original submission was quite detailed. The responses to the objection were also quite detailed, and I don't propose to waste the Council's valuable time by going through that again. My role here really is, should you have any questions of a technical nature, to clear up any misunderstandings. And I should be quite clear that in terms of aviation, it is quite nuanced. It does require a depth of understanding. I've been in this world for 15 years operating airfields, so I'm quite sure I know what I'm talking about. The difficulty is a little bit of understanding is sometimes worse than no understanding, because it does very much depend on nuance and context, and that was demonstrated in some of the comments made in the objection, which have been rebutted in some detail. So without going on for too much further, really, I'm here should you have any particular technical questions that you could help you to make your decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any response from officers on that? Probably not. No. Okay, thank you. Right, I'm happy to open that up to elected members now to ask any technical questions of officers. So, Councillor David Taylor, Chalmers St Mary's.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor David Taylor, Chalmers St Mary's. Thank you for the report. Excellent, great detail. My only interest is to see where you're turning the plane to actually take off. Sorry, it's not on this picture here. There's two versions of the plane, one going down the further wash and moving further up the runway. That's the one. If you move the plane further up, does it still give it added runway to take off?
These positions, aircraft move from their standing position towards the end of the runway. When they get there, they do a brief 30-second engine test just to test everything. Yeah. And then they move around to the end of the runway, ready for takeoff.
That's fine.
Okay. No.
Thank you.
Any more technical questions? Yes, Councillor David Cranbourne.
Just, excuse me, David Took from Cranbourne and Alderholt. How much further will the footpath be to walk once it's diverted than it is now? There might be a couple of numbers in there because you've got a shortcut across the runway that's not part of the current path.
The current route is 440 metres, I think, and the diverted route is in the order of 950 metres, so it's about another 500 metres further to walk. I'm not sure about the actual walked route. I haven't measured that. This is the legal route, shall we say, the one on the definitive map. So it's about another 500 metres further.
Thank you.
Do members have any other technical questions, or happy to move into debate? And obviously I'm happy to take a proposal. Okay, for the purposes of the audio, could you just press your button?
Sorry, Chair, I propose this to go through. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Belinda Borden.
Do you want me to say something? Yeah, Councillor Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth, and I second this. It seems a fairly reasonably straightforward safety versus convenience, and not walking across a runway seems a very sensible safety measure.
Excellent. So we've got a proposal and a second. It's not really something we can bring an amendment to, so I'm happy to take that to a vote now with a simple show of hands. So those in favour of the recommendations? Lovely, thank you very much. So that item is resolved. Yeah, so that was a unanimous vote. I'm trying to look for the, I don't have an application number there, actually. So that, no, I don't have an application number, Democratic. Don't have application numbers for that, for it's a variance. Yeah, no problem. Excellent. One down. 2 to go. So we next move to agenda item 6. This is PVOC 2024-05918, North Dairy Farm, access to North Dairy Farm, Pulham. And this is presented by Rob, who introduced himself earlier on. Rob, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. This is a Section 73 application to vary Condition 2 of the original permission for a solar farm at North Dairy Farm in Pulham. It was resolved to grant planning permission by this committee at the July 2023 meeting, and following the completion of a legal agreement to secure a biodiversity compensation payment, the permission was issued by the Council on the 15th of January 2024. The reason this major Section 73 application is being brought back to committee is because the officer recommendation to approve is contrary to objection comments made by Mapowder Parish Council as one of the host parish areas for the site. So this is the proposed rewording of Condition 2. It's simply amending reference to 35 years to 40 years to effectively permit an additional 5 years of solar farm operation and export of renewable energy to the grid. There's no other proposed amendments to the already consented scheme. It's just worth reiterating the fact that we're just focusing only on the proposed extension of the lifetime. The variation of Condition 2 to extend the lifespan would also require similar slight rewording of Condition 5, and I'll come back to this a bit later on. Can everyone see that? Okay. I'll just put a pointer on just to show these are the changes here. So for the benefit of members on the committee who may not be too familiar with the original permission, I'll just run through a few slides just as some background. So hopefully you can see the red star on the slide there just shows where the application site is in the wider context of this part of the county. It lies in the open countryside, close to the west of the village of Hazelbury Bryan in the former North Dorset District Council area, and it's roughly equidistant between Blandford and Sherborne. The site comprises some 77 hectares of agricultural land in total, as shown by the red line on this plan. It amounts to 11 fields of the wider North Dairy Farm unit, which is outlined in blue. And this is the approved site plan for the solar farm. Just gives you an idea of the extent of it and orientation of arrays relative to the land and the red line area. The bulk of the ancillary elements, including the substation, the new pylon, containers, will be located immediately adjacent to the existing overhead line, which runs along here. This is the substation area. And just to be clear, there's no proposal for any battery storage on site. Some elevations of the solar arrays, they'd stand at least 0.8 of a metre above ground and no higher than 2.6 metres. And here are the approved plans for the substation area, set relatively centrally within the site. Again, there's nothing unusual about this. And these are the various approved ancillary structures forming part of the development dotted around the site. So this slide shows the main part of the site shaded in yellow. Hopefully you can make that out here. And in the context with the most pertinent constraints in the local area. So while the site doesn't It's self-contained with any designated areas. It does lie within proximity to some, and there's a number of environmental sensitivities surrounding the site, which need to be continued to take account of. The one that officers consider could be affected the most is the setting of the Dorset National Landscape, which wraps around the south part of the site. That's this red shaded area here. So, excuse me, the main planning considerations for varying the condition are considered to be the principle of 5 additional years of the development, environmental effects, including visual and landscape impacts, flood risks and ecology, from 5 additional years of the development being in situ, as well as highways and transport impacts and residential amenity. So in terms of principle, policies 3 and 22 of the local plan support appropriately cited renewable and low carbon energy developments. I've set out in the committee report that the relevant paragraph within the new 2024 NPPF is 168, it was 163, and it's been, that particular paragraph has been amended through the new 2024 version to explicitly instruct LPAs to give significant weight to the benefits associated with renewable and low carbon energy generation and the proposal's contribution to a net zero future in decision making. So this national policy position is materially different from the policy at the time of the original permission, and it's quite clear from the NPPF now the favourable weighting that should be given to the principle of the development. As I'm sure members will be aware, the Council declared a climate emergency in May 2019 and have since published climate and ecological emergency strategies. The latest one of that, the 2023 to 2025 strategy, maintains that it's the Council's aim to be carbon neutral by 2040. And so the proposed 49.99 megawatt solar farm would assist in meeting this ambition by providing enough renewable energy to power 11,745 homes each year over the proposed extended 40-year operational period. It has a stamp permission for 35 years already. In turn, this would displace 10,402 tonnes of CO2 emissions a year. There'd also be some minor economic benefits in terms of extending any jobs associated with the solar farm being in place for a further 5 years. So, as the report points out, there's been numerous other solar farms granted planning permission for a 40-year period, so it's not unusual in that respect. And these very substantial public benefits can, as the NPPF advises, be given significant weight in the overall planning balance. But of course, these must be weighed against any adverse impacts that may prevail for a further 5 years of the solar farm being in situ. So in terms of environmental effects, flood risks, as highlighted at the time of the original application, the site is affected by flooding from a number of sources. You can see from this map here, the site in yellow, and these are fluvial and surface water risks. A sequential approach had been taken to locate the solar arrays and other ancillary infrastructure outside of flood zones 2 and 3, but there are some parts of the site, including the main access track, which I've circled in red, which is the main access site access track into the site, does fall within medium and high risk flood areas, and so the flood risk sequential test and exception test needed to be applied at the time of the original permission. Both were deemed to be satisfied as per the requirements of the NPPF to enable the grant of planning permission. That position is unchanged as the land area extent of the proposed development is unaffected by the proposed variation of the condition. Paragraph 173 of the NPPF sets additional criteria to be met with regards to flood risk mitigation, and with no objections raised by both the Environment Agency and the lead local flood authority, these could be demonstrated to be met through the original permission, subject to conditions being reimposed. This will remain the case. So therefore, officers remain satisfied that the proposed development would be made safe for its extended lifetime without increasing flood risk elsewhere. Moving on to visual and landscape impact, the site straddles 2 landscape character areas. The northern part of the site lies within the Blackmore Vale, which is a broad, gently undulating flat landscape, and the southern part lies within the South Blackmore Rolling Vales, which is more undulating and rolling pastoral landscape. There's several public rights of way near the site, as you can see, hopefully with the pink and green lines on that map. And there is a footpath that crosses through the site as well. So owing to its extensive size and the surrounding topography, the proposed development would be visible from a number of public viewpoints within the immediate local landscape. To minimise visual and landscape impacts in accordance with Policy 22 of the local plan, the scheme was amended during the course of the original application to reduce the number of arrays, as well as introduce new tree and hedgerow planting and bolstering existing vegetation to screen some of those sensitive views. So in terms of localised visual impacts, this is a viewpoint taken from the eastern end of the footpath that passes through the site, and shows that owing to existing field hedgerows, there would be limited visibility of panels towards the north of the footpath from here, and this would continue to be the case if the solar farm was in situ for a further 5 years. The arrays would be clearly evident and dominate immediate views whilst traversing the right-of-way which passes through the site, resulting in a major moderate adverse effect, and this effect would prevail for a further 5 years. The next 4 slides show photo montages with visualizations of the scheme taken from the applicant's LVIA submitted with the original application. So this one's taken from the bridleway close to the northeast part of the site. And you have the top image, which shows the effect from year 1, and then the bottom image is year 15, and the effect that the proposed screening would have. Hopefully you can make that out okay. So just on the point of new planting and landscaping, condition 5 of the original permission secured soft landscaping details and stipulates that details of any replacement vegetation would need to be submitted to the LPA for any existing or proposed trees or shrubs and hedgerows that may die or become seriously diseased and damaged throughout the entire lifetime of the solar farm. So such a condition effectively ensures that the vegetation screening, such as that shown here, can be controlled and ensure that the site is appropriately screened to minimise visual and landscape impacts for the lifetime of the development. So with the lifetime conditions sought to be varied by the current application, it follows that the time frame element within condition 5 would also need to be varied to reflect the additional 5 years of operation sought and ensure that the reasoning for that condition is upheld. And I'll show the proposed wording of this towards the end of my presentation. This photo montage is taken from the footpath about 650 metres to the east of the site at Pleck Hill. And again, the top image is year 1 and bottom one is year 15. This photo montage is taken from the highway outside Fir Tree Farm, which is about 750 metres to the southeast of the site. And again, top image year 1, bottom year 15. And then this one is taken from Taylor's Lane, which is 1.1 kilometre to the south of the site. Again, top one is the effect from year 1 and bottom year 15. The application site is around 1.25 kilometres at closest point to the National Landscape Designation, as can be seen from the shaded areas on this map. It's been accepted that the site forms part of the setting of this designated area, with the North Dorset Chalk Escarpment, which is shaded in orange, providing some panoramic views across the landscape. The next slides will show a couple of examples of this, again taken from the applicant's LVIA submitted with the original application. So these are photo montages with visualizations of the scheme taken from the LVIA. This is from a footpath some 3.1 kilometres to the southeast of the site in the Stoke Wake area. Again, top images after year 1, the bottom one year 15. From this viewpoint, the mitigation proposed would be effective. These would represent improvements once the planting reaches a degree of maturity, and there's a condition to ensure hedgerows should be maintained at a minimum height of 3 metres to ensure that's adequately screened. This view is from an open access land area adjacent to Ralsbury Camp, and it allows for probably the greatest overall appreciation of the solar farm, albeit at a distance of some 4 to 4.5 kilometres. There's other wider views of the development from elevated locations within the national landscape, are generally more distant and often filtered by intervening vegetation. Each wider long-distant viewpoint identified along the escarpment would not be regarded as significant in their own right, but the series of moderate effects on the outlook from the national landscape places the effects on the cusp of being significant. Officers consider that the initial changes made to the originally approved scheme sought to further the purpose of conserving and enhancing the national landscape, as now required by the revised Section 85 of the Countryside and Rights of Way Act, and this remains the case. It's also still accepted that the scale of the development is such that it would be challenging to fully mitigate the visual and landscape impact. The presence of solar arrays would change the character of the landscape and result in a degree of harm to local landscape character areas and the setting of the national landscape, and do so for an additional 5 years. But again, the weight given to this harm needs to be weighed against the public benefits of the solar farm operating for an additional 5 years. In terms of biodiversity, owing to the size of the site, a landscape and ecological management plan, LEMP, was approved and conditioned as part of the original permission. The mitigation and enhancement measures within the LEMP remain relevant, with the 5-year extension to the operation lifetime of the solar farm not affecting the implementation and management of the various measures, as the time frame for enforcing the LEMP is open and spans, as quoted, the full operational lifetime of the solar farm. So that could include any proposed extensions to the lifetime. In fact, the additional 5 years would result in some beneficial biodiversity measures persisting for a further 5 years. And the LEMP is also required to be reviewed after 5 years of operation, whereby the objectives and prescriptions can be examined against monitoring visits and updated to reflect the additional 5-year operation period if required. There was also a conservation payment of £28,000 secured by Section 106 during the course of the original application to mitigate for great crested newts. There's a clause within that legal agreement which indicates that the deed can also apply to any Section 73 permission in the same way as it applied to the original. So there would need to be a deed of variation. The LEMP is recommended to be reimposed as a condition, but reworded with the additional 5 years of enforceability to reflect the extension sought and to ensure that the potential adverse impacts upon local wildlife and habitats can be satisfactorily mitigated and enhanced, as well as securing visual and landscape mitigation for the extended duration. So it's this was 34, it's going to be 39 years. No objections were raised by the Highway Authority at the time of the original permission, and there's no material changes in this respect to reach a different conclusion for the variation of Condition 2. The proposed variation would only affect highway and transport impacts insofar as traffic associated with the decommissioning phase, which could potentially occur 5 years later than the original permission. But there is a traffic management plan for the decommission phase required by Condition 18, which is on the screen on the original, and that can be reimposed. In terms of residential amenity, a noise impact assessment was submitted with the original application and indicates that the development would give rise to a low impact and categorised as no observed adverse effect level within the PPG's noise exposure hierarchy table, and it's therefore concluded. It therefore follows that the continuation of this acceptable effect for a further 5 years would not result in significant adverse effects upon neighbouring residential amenity. There was a glint and glare assessment also provided with the original application, and this considered possible impact upon nearby dwellings. And again, the continuation of the solar farm for potentially a further 5 years would mean that vegetated screening to mitigate any effects of glint and glare could be allowed to grow and continue mitigating for those further 5 years. So it remains that the impact upon neighbouring amenity would not be significantly harmful. In terms of other material matters, the assessment with the original application accepted that having regard to Section 66 and 72 of the Planning and Listed Building Act, there would be no harm caused to any heritage assets, and the continuation of the solar farm for a further 5 years would not affect that conclusion. The site is covered by a tree preservation order, which covers all trees of whatever species on the site. There's no trees proposed to be removed again. And the approved LEMP includes plans for soil improvement and management of the veteran trees, which will be improved through soil decompaction and mulching for an additional 5 years if the proposed variation is granted. And this would provide additional benefits in this respect. There's a arboricultural method statement secured by condition with the original permission, and that can be reimposed to ensure the impact on protected trees remains acceptable. The site comprises subgrade 3B and grade 4 agricultural land, with at least half of it classed as grade 4 poor. It remains satisfied, therefore, that the proposed development would satisfactorily avoid the best and most versatile agricultural land. The variation of the condition would not affect the fact that the scheme would be reversible and the land would still be returned to full agricultural use following decommissioning. Low-intensity sheep grazing among the solar arrays would be able to continue as well for a further 5 years. So just to summarise, it's still accepted that the scale of development is such that it would be challenging to fully mitigate the visual and landscape impact. The presence of solar arrays would change the character of the landscape and result in a degree of harm to local landscape character areas and the setting of the national landscape for an additional 5 years. However, the lifetime extension of the already permitted solar farm by a further 5 years would provide 5 additional years of very substantial public benefits in terms of national and local renewable energy generation and meeting key local plan objectives, and this should be given significant weight in the overall planning balance. With the reimposition of conditions, flood risks and ecology would not be adversely affected and could all continue to be suitably mitigated for the additional 5 years the solar farm would be in situ. Highway and transport impacts, the impact upon neighbouring residential amenity and other material planning considerations set out in the report can also be satisfied for a further 5 years and avoid adverse effects. So on balance, officers consider that the public benefits arising from an additional 5 years of renewable energy production would outweigh any residual visual and landscape harm that would prevail for a further 5 years. So for these reasons, the Section 73 application to vary Condition 2 is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rob. So we now move to Ian Bryan from Save Hardy's Fell Group. Ian, you have 3 minutes. We'll give you a heads up at 2 minutes 30.
Thank you, Chair. Ian Bryan for Save Hardy's Vale Group and the Pulham Parish Meeting. In 2021, the applicant assured this council that solar development would not harm the landscape. Today, you know for certain that it will cause prolonged harm, which could never be fully mitigated in a designated area highly sensitive to solar development. The applicant also claimed that flooding was not a problem and that it would be unnecessary to even calculate the existing greenfield runoff rates for the areas of solar panels. But today, you know it's absolutely necessary, and you've already attached comprehensive pre-commencement drainage conditions. That's not surprising on a site with double the rainfall of the Bournemouth coast, in a county holding a national 24-hour rainfall record, and at the confluence of the Upper Liddon and Wanston Brook. In 2023, this committee was told it was unimaginable for solar panels to increase peak flows or alter the timings of surface runoff and flooding. We believe the opinion holder did not have a hydrological qualification, a belief supported by the December 3rd, 2021 memo from the Flood Risk Management Team to the case officer. So that solar panels can significantly change the times to peak flows and increase flooding is demonstrated by the expert opinion of Hydro GIS Limited and other authorities, and by the clear necessity for stringent conditions attached to the grant of approval in 2023. We believe the members were also wrongly advised that drainage need only ensure that existing rates of surface runoff and flooding are matched. But NPPF 178B and the Council's Strategic Flood Risk Management Plan require that all major developments should, where possible, reduce flooding, not simply match the existing rates. In July 2023, a member asked what the area of the solar panels would be and was told that the essential information was not available. Is it available today? Because without knowing the area covered by the panels and having the results of ground infiltration tests, any claim that running and flooding would be matched is absolutely meaningless. And the government riparian guidance notes you must not build anything which increases flood risk to other people's property, or you may have to pay damage.
30 seconds.
To tell the members that the area of solar panels is, and what the flood control conditions first suggested 4 years ago, when they will be discharged. In the meanwhile, Chair, we ask you to defer a decision until the applicant provides the Council with the drainage and flood control proposals to ensure the existing surface runoff and flood rates are reduced or, at the very least, not exceeded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ian. We then have the applicant or agent speaking, Laura Fogarty. Laura, exactly the same. We'll give you a heads up at 2 minutes 30, but you have 3 full minutes.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for allowing BSR to speak in support of this Section 73 application to extend the operational life of our consented solar farm from 35 to 40 years from the date electricity is first supplied to the grid. BSR is a British company based in the southwest, and our mission is to create abundant and accessible renewable energy which has a positive impact upon people and the planet. Under the existing consent granted by the Planning Committee in July 2023, the solar park would power 13,000 homes each year, making a significant contribution to the Council's aim to be carbon neutral by 2040. The proposed additional 5 years would allow for the solar park to continue to power thousands of homes a year and maximise the energy generating capabilities of the existing infrastructure, preventing significant carbon emissions and continuing to deliver local and community benefits. An addendum to the approved environmental statement was submitted alongside this application. This confirmed that the assessments, findings and recommendations within the environmental statement remain unchanged. The proposed 5-year extension would not impact upon the construction phase, as there would be no additional traffic or materials, nor would it affect the duration of the construction period. Similarly, it would not impact or alter the findings or recommendations of the approved ecology assessment and the approved landscape and visual impact assessment. Should this application be granted, the approval would be subject to planning conditions. The information submitted by BSR to address these conditions would reflect the updated lifespan of the development. This would include a surface water management scheme detailing the management of surface water on site for the full duration of the development. Should the committee be minded to grant the application, the variation of condition 2 would continue to maintain the original purpose of the condition, which is to affirm the temporary nature of the permission and ensure its proper decommissioning at the end of its operational lifespan. BSR remain committed to fully decommissioning the site and returning it to its original condition as per our existing obligations. The additional 5 years of operation will allow for the maximisation of renewable energy generation at the site and support the Council's ambitions towards achieving net zero. The variation would continue to accord with policies in the local plan and the NPPF. I therefore request the committee's support for this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. We now move to parish representation with Peter Moyes. Peter, again, I'll give you a heads up at 2.5 minutes. You have 3 full minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Peter Moyes representing Maplewood Parish Meeting. The application you are considering is... Am I on now? Is that okay? Or okay. Thank you, Chair. The application you are considering is to extend the life of development, which was approved with conditions attached in July 2023. Some members here will recall it was described as a knife-edge decision because 1, the location is designated as highly sensitive to solar development, 2, significant landscape damage will be caused by this development, and 3, the serious and highly contentious matter of surface runoff and floods, risks associated with enormous areas of impermeable solar panels. To date, the authority's planning record indicates that no surface runoff calculations for the areas covered by the solar panels have been undertaken, no ground infiltration surveys have been undertaken, no groundwater flooding tests have been undertaken. The impacts on downstream riparian owners of the upstream work and drainage arrangements has not been fully assessed. In fact, the riparian owners have not even been consulted. The officer's report states, when referring to the site, and I quote, must be made safe for its lifetime without increasing flood risk elsewhere. This also relies on conditions for this application, section 17, paragraphs 6, 7 and 8, being submitted by the company and applied. It is imperative for total openness that the 4 parishes are kept informed as to the proposals the applicant puts forward to ensure that current flooding levels will not be increased by the installation of the solar panels. A further condition is to provide a detailed soil management plan to outline how overcompaction will be avoided both during and post-construction. This leads to a report compiled by the Welsh Government in 2023. The impact of solar voltaic sites on agricultural soils and lands relating to decommissioning and has identified gaps in evidence, knowledge and experience. The following may impact on the physical reversibility to agriculture. The impact of pile and beam pullout on agricultural land and soil is unknown. Pile pullout may be complex, with piles fracturing and requiring further work to dig out. Pile corrosion and soil contamination from the potential loss of zinc, thank you, from the galvanizing coats on piles. The recovery timescale is now somewhere in the region of 18 to 30 years to bring the land back to its normal state. There is likely to be residual compaction with the soil, which is going to be increased with an additional 5 years. There is a very big knowledgeable gap on the impact of closed, spaced, galvanized piles being in soil for over 40 years.
So I'm not arguing you, I'm telling you that you had 3 minutes, and thank you for that representation. So now we look to the officers. Is there anything, so quite a lot to unpick there, and I know you'll be mindful that what we're considering today is not re-arguing the initial application, its merits or not, but specifically the 5-year extension.
Is that okay? Is that? Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, I think the main concern still there that was raised in terms of drainage. I think it's important to stress that in the course of the original application, the lead local flood authority were consulted and looked at the technical details that were submitted with the application in terms of surface water runoff. And they were satisfied with the extent of the information that was provided at that time in terms of ensuring that there isn't unacceptable runoff from the site and that flooding isn't made worse elsewhere. We do have the pre-commencement condition, so that means that before any works are undertaken, full technical details of that drainage scheme need to be submitted. And again, the lead local flood authority will look at those details, ensure they're satisfactory before that condition could be signed off. So in terms of the 5-year extension, that doesn't change, and we're satisfied as officers that there's sufficient information that's been provided already, and that in terms of the 5-year extension, there's no other concerns in terms of flooding over and above the original consent. Thank you, Chair. apologies, sorry. In terms of the point on the contamination of the soil, I don't have any information about that to hand that I could assist with, unfortunately, and it wasn't raised previously on the other application. So that impact could occur anyway for 35 years. Thank you.
Thank you. So I now open this up to members if you have any technical questions you wish to ask of officers. David Taylor, Chelmsford St Mary's, and I have Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis, and David Took, Cranbourne.
Thank you, Chair. David Taylor, Chelmsford St Mary's, you said. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you've covered the thing which I was going to bring in, actually, the fact of the reports to do with the flooding and the actual... My interest is the solar panels, because of the level that I've got to be careful where I go with this, because I'm trying not to predetermine in the area, is the fact is, what is the coverage of the solar panels to give the water penetration, as in giving it like a flat surface? Because that would be concerned, because it is a big site. And things that, and also the fact is, my concern is that there. Can I see the drawing, Rob, of the floodplain when it was showing the actual maximum flood wash? Thank you, that one there. Obviously, there'll be an input of excess water coming in off the solar panels, because there must be, because there's a flat surface, going onto the fields. Now, where would the runoff, that's a question I would ask specifically, it's a technical one, to see the runoff from the water, would it go towards the flood alluvial plains which are shown there? That's the first question, Chair.
Sorry, could you just repeat that? I was just speaking to Hannah at the time, sorry.
Okay, where the panels will be installed on the yellow piece, the farm, there, of the angle and the position of the solar panels, would it flow the water down towards the flood, where the water is running away? Would it direct it towards there?
I can find the plan of the drainage scheme if that would help. It's not in the presentation. I'll have to dig it out of the file. But there are measures proposed. There was swales from the top of my head and some other measures which would have been looked at by the lead local flood authority, and the Environment Agency were consulted as well. So they've looked at all those details and accepted them. Would you like me to try and dig out the plan? I'll see if I can put it on screen.
Can I just give a little bit of guidance here? So we're not rehashing the impact of the original extant permission. We need to be focused on the 5 years, and the officers made it clear that there's a pre-commencement flood alleviation scheme that will need to be put into place before commencement. So just a little bit of guidance from the chair there.
That's the clarity, Chair, I'm trying to get, so that I totally understand it when it comes to full, because the fact is that we don't know, and from what the presentation, I don't know. All I'm seeing is that what could possibly be, where is it going? So that's my question, really, to understand the control of it all. Is that okay, Chair?
So that really was a consideration of the extant permission that we have, and the mitigation of that is conditioned upon the flood alleviation scheme. So I'm not sure, if that is not met, then the any resolution on that application fails. Thank you. Councillor Borden.
Thank you, Chair. Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth. Oops, wrong glasses. On the question generally of public benefit and the generation of renewable energy, it states enough to power approximately 11,745 homes and displacing 10,402 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions every year. I think one of the things that people express concerns about with solar installations is that the public benefit is almost a global benefit and it's not necessarily seen locally. Do we know whether or not this energy actually benefits Dorset or the homes in the local area, or does it all just go into the general grid? I don't know whether it's possible to say this, but I do generally feel that people are more favourably disposed if that there is more local benefit. Thanks.
Yeah, it will feed into the national grid, is the answer. But so there's not any specific local kind of community benefit in that sense, but it will be a public benefit insofar as it's going into the national grid and providing renewable energy.
So if it helps, we understand there's no battery energy storage system here, but this will contribute nationally to decarbonising the grid by 2030, which is the aim. Councillor Took, Cranbourne.
Thank you, Chair. David Took, Cranbourne, Alderholt. Couple of questions. First of all, just to confirm, what we're really talking about here is not having a solar farm here. We're talking about it being extended for 5 years. There's going to be a solar farm. Are we okay with it being 5 more years? And that's the only question we're being asked today, I believe. Is that correct? Okay. During those 35, 40 years, technology moves rather rapidly. I remember 40 years ago, we didn't really talk about solar panels that much, starting to. But these days, there's a new one coming out every 2 months, it seems, which is a better and more efficient one. Are the operators of this going to be able to replace the existing solar panels with more effective, modern and efficient generators of power over the course of this lifetime of this solar farm, or are they basically stuck with what they put in now?
Thank you, Chair. That would be down to the developer whether the panels were placed they'd have to be on a like-for-like basis in terms of the scale that the details we proposed, unless there was any modification. But there's no sort of control through the application that they have to be replaced with more efficient panels, but that may well happen as technology moves on. Thank you, Chair.
So it's possible for them to upgrade it during the life. So long as they stay within the general rules of the permission granted.
Thank you, Chair. If the panels needed replacing because they failed or needed to be replaced, if they were done on a like-for-like basis, that wouldn't be outside the scope of the application because we've granted the solar panels and there are plans of what they should look like in terms of their height and the size of the panels. But if they were, as long as they didn't sort of move outside of that, what we'd granted, if they were more efficient but were similar same as what we'd granted in terms of the elevational drawings that we have approved, then that wouldn't be an issue. And there could always be a modification that would have to go through the correct route at a point in time if they needed to do that. But we don't actually have the control over it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other technical questions? No? Are we happy to either move into debate or I'm happy to take a proposal?
Yeah, Chair, if I may. From my point of view, we're not being asked to consider the merits of the original decision, but rather the effects of increasing the 35 to 40 years. And I've had a look at MPPF 168, and I agree with the planning officer that, and I'm satisfied the weight to be given to public benefit does outweigh any harm caused by a further 5 years of operation. 40 years is becoming common for solar farms, and accordingly, I totally agree with the officer's recommendation. I won't actually put a proposal forward at this stage, but I may do shortly. Thank you.
Members, yes. Councillor...
Craig Monks.
Councillor Monks Beminster.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Craig Monks, Bedminster Ward. Just to follow on from my colleague there, I agree. I think as ward councillors, and many of us are either heavily involved or also sit on town and parish councils, we as representatives always want to make sure that towns and parishes are heard and their concerns are echoed often. So I thank you both for attending. I think for me, going to the sort of the nub of the question of what we're being asked. I completely agree with Councillor Bowell, because we're not here to, whether we would like to or not, we're not here to discuss the previous application. We're here to discuss whether or not we're content that a further 5 years is acceptable. And I suppose, if anything, it could be a technical question, but for me, the officer's report is very thorough, and there's nothing in the report that makes me think that something that was put forward to support the previous application is materially changed by the fact of the 5 years that hasn't been explained. So on that basis, I would be leaning towards approval, because I don't think we've got much more choice on what we've had put in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Monks. Councillor Borden, Lyme Regis.
Thank you, Chair. I was assuming that Councillor Monks was going to propose, so I was going to second, but I will propose agreement subject to the conditions.
Councillor David Took, Cranbourne.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd second that. I think we've heard about the original application and issues to do with that, but they're not really relevant to today's application. I don't see how an extra 5 years will harm particularly more than anything else that's going on. So I'm quite happy that this proposal is fine, and I will second it to grant planning permission subject to the conditions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to speak? No? Okay, so again, with a simple show of hands, the proposal which has been seconded is to approve this application to extend the life of the solar farm by 5 years to 40 years. So all those in favour? Okay, so that's unanimous. So application PVOC 2024-05918 is approved. I thank the public speakers that came today, and whilst not conditioned, I would encourage British Solar Renewables to keep those 4 parishes informed with progress. Thank you. So we now move to agenda item number 7. This is a first for all of us, I think. This is an anaerobic digester plant, Rainbarrow Farm, at the renowned Monkeys Jump roundabout, host to McDonald's. Other burgers are available. And this is going to be presented online by Eleanor Gozier with, and I can see Eleanor now. Eleanor, can you hear us?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. So over to you, Eleanor.
Thank you very much for letting me present online. I'll just share my presentation with you. Just bear with me. That should be coming through. Can you see that now? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, Eleanor, that's fine. All good to go when you are.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. I'll just change my pointer. Right. Just before I'll introduce myself. I'm Eleanor Godesar. I'm a Senior Planning Officer in the Minerals and Waste team. Just before I start presenting, I would just like to raise a couple of changes to 2 conditions which Phil Crowther has suggested. So if you could please turn to page 9. I'll just get the page number in the Page number 117, which is for condition 2, just like to remove the words in the third line up from the bottom, continue to. So it would read, a log of vehicular movements shall be kept. If I could please suggest that. And then also, if you please turn to the update sheet, page 2, on the second line from the bottom, we would like to remove the words for the duration of the development. So it would be, shall be implemented and maintained. The reason for that is that this is a permanent permission, so there's no need for it to be for the duration of a development that is permanent. So turning to the planning application, there's a very large description there. The reason for that is that this is the second variation of condition of the original permission. So we have the original description in the first part of the first part, then we have the description for the variation of condition which was approved in 2012. But the main part that is before you today is the section that is in bold at the bottom, which seeks to regularise the traffic levels, annual feedstock throughput, and the type of feedstock. So it is a retrospective application. The operation has been operating since 2012. There are no proposed changes to buildings, equipment, any layout of the actual site. The reason that the application is before you today is that we have had some refusal, some objections from parish councils. I'll just read them out to you. So that was from Winterbourne Farringdon Parish Council Group, which includes Winterbourne Moncton Parish Council, Dorset Town Council and Stinsford Parish Council. So I just thought it would be helpful to give some background into what an anaerobic digester plant is. So anaerobic digestion involves the fermentation of organic material in the absence of air. So feedstock is delivered at harvest time. For this, I'm sort of focusing on what Rainbarrow Farm does. So the feedstock in terms of that site is agricultural crops delivered at harvest time and stored in the feedstock clamps. Rainbarrow Farm no longer uses waste feedstock, which is quite different to a lot of these anaerobic digester plants, which will take in food waste, agricultural waste. And there are reasons why Rainbarrow Farm only accepts agricultural feedstock, and I've outlined that in the report. It's issues in terms of quality of the material and also consistency of the products which come out of the digester. So feedstock is fed into the anaerobic digester via the hoppers, and then within the anaerobic conditions, bacteria ferment the feedstock and produce biogas along with, with solid digestate. So you can see a little flow chart at the bottom, which is I've borrowed from the Blooming Amazing website, which is the solid digestate, which is sold in nurseries, a liquid digestate, which is used on the farms which supply the feedstock to Rainbarrow Farm, carbon dioxide, and some electricity. So the biogas is then cleaned before it enters into the national gas grid. So turning to the site, this shows where Rainbarrow Farm is. It's to the west of Dorchester and Poundbury. And just showing with my laser, here's the access along the northern side. The access leads on to Bridport Road, and then the 275 metres, it leads into the Monkey's Jump roundabout. In terms of the constraints for the site to be considered, It is within the Dorset National Landscape. Maiden Castle is approximately 1.3 kilometres south of the site. And I've also highlighted the closest residences. So we have the radio station cottages, approximately 395 metres. Then we also have Rainbow Farm and a small cluster of dwellings to the south. Rainbow Farm's approximately 345 metres from the site. So in terms of just a background to this variation of condition application, as I've already mentioned, the 2012 permission just showing the layout of the site. So we have the anaerobic digester, the digested store, and then we have the feedstock clamps, which is where all the harvest material is received and then stored and then used throughout the year to feed the plant. And I just highlighted here that at the stage of the 2012 permission, they were accepted a 35,000 tonne annual tonnage. Also, I just wanted to mention the 2017 permission. It was a full application, so it's not directly linked to this variation of condition application, but it does have some acceptance in terms of some of the features for the site. So it accepted a fourth storage clamp, which then accepted an increase in the annual tonnage of feedstock. And the other key change was that this was at the point where all the previously waste feedstock, which used to be put into the plant, that was ceased. And so from 2017, it was purely an agricultural crop feedstock. And I've just highlighted that at that point, 42,500 tonnes per annum was accepted. Just some photos to give you some idea of the site. We have the access here. The feedstock clamps are along this side of the site. And then we've got the anaerobic digester here in the foreground. The store, the digester store, which is where the biogas is stored. And then a few more. We've got the this was at harvest time in autumn last year, so you can see the fresh harvest here and here that had just come in the previous weeks. And then we have the hoppers, which this is where the feedstock is fed into the anaerobic digester. And then on the right we have the solid digestate, which comes out of the product which comes out of the anaerobic digester. So after all that, I will turn to what we are here today to consider. So the application seeks to vary conditions 27 is the first one, and 28, which I'll speak about later. This condition was quite prescriptive. It refers to particular paragraphs within the planning support statement at the time. So I'll just show you that. I've just pulled out this table, which shows quite a prescriptive numbers of deliveries which were expected for each of the different feedstocks. So the top three, the dairy cow slurry, chicken manure and the potato waste, are no longer part of the operation. So we are looking at grass silage and maize silage, and they had particular tonnes per day during the harvest period. So I have just on the left-hand side, it's an estimate calculation, but based on the approval in 2012, 64 vehicle trips per day were estimated during the busiest autumn period. And then the 2017 permission, it didn't have a transport statement, but there was some information in the planning statement. And I've just estimated that it was probably around 100 vehicle trips per day during the busiest autumn period. So you can see that there's a step up in terms of not only the tonnage, annual tonnage rates, but also the trips, delivery trips. Oops, sorry. So I've just taken some tables which have been provided by the applicant. I just wanted to highlight a few of the figures here. So the top one, sorry, I'm partly covered, but the observed movements I think was in 2023. So average loads per day, the maize is would be in the autumn period, so that's 100 loads per day. And then from that 2023 figure, which is an annual tonnage, it has stepped up again to 54,000, which is what the applicant's seeking to regulise. The transport consultant from the applicant has predicted some future vehicle movements. So for the 60,000 annual tonnage, they are estimating that the average loads per day for maize, which is the busiest period, would be 111 loads per day, which equates to 222 trips. So one delivery in, and then the tractor and trailer then moving out of the site. Now, all of this needs to be considered in terms of the background, which is relating to the A35 and A37. And in terms of increases, so it's based on this 222 trips. We're looking at increases under 1% for each of the routes going from Rainbow Farm. Now, these delivery figures, I acknowledge they look high, and I will talk about this a little bit later. But I think it's important to mention at this point that there is no highway safety concerns associated with this variation of condition application, and there are some reasons for that. Probably the main one is that the location of the site is it's approximately 275 metres from the Monkeys Jump roundabout. So there are very high vehicle movements, but only during short periods in the harvest. And then the short distance of greatest concentrations of trips is along that part of Bridport Road between the site access and Monkeys Jump roundabout. But then they will disperse along the different routes quickly. And then in terms of the neighbours, there are no residential properties along this part of Bridport Road. We have one business that is well known, McDonald's, and they do have some problems with overflow parking along Bridport Road. But the Highways authorities has advised me that it does not obstruct the highway. So it's the tractor and trailers which are accessing Rainbow Farm are able to use that route safely, irrespective of any overflow concerns with McDonald's. So I have touched on it. So we have no highway objection to this proposal, but there are some amenity issues which have been raised in terms of the high numbers of vehicle movements, particularly in the early summer, spring harvest, and also the autumn harvest, which is when the deliveries will be concentrated. And then outside those two periods, deliveries will be very low. There will be a consistent export delivery going on though. but they are significantly lower than the peak harvest deliveries. So the applicant has submitted a delivery and servicing plan, which is aimed at helping to address these amenity issues. So they're suggesting 3 primary measures to control and regulate routes for HGVs travelling to and from the site, manage the tonnage of feedstock being processed by the facility, and effective communication with hauliers and suppliers to ensure that they are aware of the requirements of the delivery and servicing plan, and that they are aware of changes and they're in communication with the site before they visit it. Within that document, there is a plan which shows where the current locations are of the feedstock source sites. We have a 10-mile buffer which has been drawn. That was secured in condition 27 of the original permission. And it just shows that most of the sites are within that 10-mile buffer, and they are using the main A roads within the area. Also within the delivery and servicing plan, they have a restricted route, and the reason for that is to protect amenity of residents who live along the Winterbourne Steepleton Martinstown Road, the B3159. And if I just return to the previous slide, you'll see that that road is in this area here, and there is only one feedstock source site which would be accessing that road. So the DSP is requiring that any other deliveries from any of the other feedstock sites would need to use the regular main routes and avoid that road. And then I've just provided you the paragraphs which show the restrictions that are proposed. It's about communication with the delivery drivers, and also to ensure that if there are any problems, that they will keep a log of vehicle movements, so that if we get any complaints, then our enforcement officers can request those details, and then we can, have a look and take it from there. So turning to condition 28, which is it relates to the feedstocks. It refers, again, it's quite prescriptive, and it refers to a paragraph number in the original planning support statement. And I'll just show you those paragraphs. So it's 29, 1.29 and 1.32. So that lists the types of feedstock which would be used in the operation. The applicant no longer uses the dairy cow slurry or the chicken manure or the potato pulp. So they are proposing to change it to the maize and grass silage and also oats. And then 1.32 previously required that the majority of the feedstock will be generated within 10 miles of Rainbow Farm. So in terms of the conclusions, the anaerobic digestive plant has been in operation since 2012, with the current application seeking to regularise increased traffic levels, annual feedstock throughput and types of feedstocks. There has been an incremental increase in the annual feedstock. So 35,000 tonnes was accepted in 2012, 42,500 tonnes accepted in the 2017 permission. So now they're seeking to regularise. I think last year 2023 it had a tonnage of, I think it was about 54,000, and they are seeking to amend the operation so that they can take in 60,000 tonnes. So trips to and from the site are concentrated on a short length of Bridport Road between the entrance and Monkeys Jump roundabout, but then the majority of trips would disperse along the A35 and the A37. So the filling of the storage clamps during harvest periods has generated high but variable numbers of vehicle trips for short periods in the spring and early summer and autumn. However, the location of the site and the characteristics of the vehicle movements has raised no highway safety concerns. So in order to address the amenity concerns associated with the vehicle movements, a delivery and servicing plan has been submitted by the applicant, which proposes a restricted route and management of deliveries. And so conditions which have been recommended, conditions 2, 3 and 4, secure the delivering and servicing plan, quantity and type of the feedstock and future feedstock locations. And then conditions from the previous permissions have been reviewed and carried forward where appropriate. So in conclusion, the application is recommended for grant subject to the updated conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Eleanor. We now move to Dudley Saunders, who is acting as agent today for this application. Dudley, you have 3 minutes, and we'll give you a heads up at 2 minutes 30.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Dudley Saunders from Sol Environment and working as the planning agent for ONGI for this application to vary multiple conditions associated with the existing consent at the Rainborough site. For over a decade, Rainborough Farm AD plant has been supplying renewable gas to approximately 6,000 homes. It produces organic fertiliser to put back onto farmland and supplies CO2 to the drinks industry. This negates the need for the use of imported fossil fuels, whilst putting millions of pounds into the local and rural economy. The applicant took control of this site during 2023 and, following a due diligence exercise, found there to be areas which required regularising. The applicant therefore aims to regularise all site operations and make the site lawful, and should be undertaking to ensure that any disruption to the amenity of residents in excess of what might ordinarily be experienced from farming operations in the locale is not exacerbated, all in the course of producing green gas to meet government objectives. The decision was taken to remove waste as a feedstock for many reasons, but primarily the following. As if waste is utilised, it creates issues with offtake of outputs, as well as difficulty in using CO2 produced if waste is utilised. To regularise this, we are proposing to vary condition 28 to allow for oats, maize and rye crops. It was recognised that the existing site was operating in exceedance of the consented annual throughput. To regularise this, the applicant is also looking to have condition 27 varied from an annual throughput of 35,000 tonnes per annum from the original consent to 60,000 tonnes per annum. It has been demonstrated through the transport statement that the proposed development would not have an adverse effect on the operational capacity of the road network and would not be expected to have an unacceptable impact on highway safety or residential amenity. A delivery and servicing plan has been proposed to be secured via a planning condition that demonstrates a scheme for managing feedstock supply during the harvest period to regulate impacts to an acceptable level for amenity and road users. To summarise, it has been demonstrated through the transport statement that the proposed development does not have a material residual impact on the road network or any unacceptable impact on residential amenity and highway safety. Further to this, the site has been shown to provide organic fertilisers to surrounding farms and supply renewable gas to approximately 6,000 homes, providing the benefits that the site holds with its increased throughput. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dudley. We now move to Parish Council representation, and our first speaker is Councillor Les Scarf from Winterbourne St Martin's Parish Council. Same again, you have 3 minutes. I'll let you have a heads up at 2 minutes 30.
I represent the Parish Council and we have grave concerns about the planning application. Any further expansion to this facility will further impact on what is a designated national landscape, formerly an AONB. With regard to traffic concerns, traffic problems between Monkey Jump Roundabout and Rainbarrow Farm entrance have worsened over recent years. McDonald's customers parking on the highway force drivers out to face fast oncoming traffic, which is a serious accident just waiting to happen, and any increase in works vehicles will make matters worse. More traffic delays will impact on bus timings, which could compromise our newly reinstated bus service, resulting in more car usage, pollution, and in-town parking problems. The Intran report, item 211, has an error. The trip numbers on the busy autumn period should read 64, not 44, as in the report. And the interim report, item 4.2, states changes to feedstock suppliers could alter supply routes. If this application goes ahead, it will give the developer a carte blanche to route vehicles wherever they choose. We would request, if planning consent is granted, that a written guarantee is obtained that the traffic levels through Martinstown will never be increased from those shown in the report. And it should be taken into account that holiday traffic will worsen all of the above problems. Regarding the increased food stock, the interim report shows that for some time the site breached the original planning consent feedstock quota by roughly 65%. It started at 35,000 tonnes and it's now reached 54,000. And we do not accept that this increase had no effect on the area. We strongly recommend that Dorset Council issue an enforcement notice in light of the breach of the planning. We feel that in light of the previous breaches of authorised feedstock quantities, if this application goes ahead, the planning authority need to carry out regular, thorough monitoring to prevent further infringements. We are very worried that the interim report also makes mention of a feedstock figure of 100,000 tonnes, which is 3 times the original permitted 35,000 tonnes. And the further impact of this would have both would have an effect on present traffic problems and the environment. In conclusion, we must oppose this application for the reasons stated. And thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scarth. Councillor Roger Holhouse from Winterbourne Farringdon Parish Council. And again, 3 minutes, and I'll give you a heads up at 2:30.
That's better. Right, I'm on there. Okay. Winterbourne Farringdon Group Parish Council stands with our neighbours Martinstown and Stinsford, along with Dorchester Parish Council, in being concerned about the adverse effect the increases in traffic movements will have on what can be a very congested section of Trunk Road and Junction, that also serves as a distributor for local traffic. The point seems to have been lost in the reasoning is that tractor and trailer combinations represent a slow-moving block of traffic that is disproportionately disruptive on long stretches of road like the A34 Dorchester bypass or the A37. So they take a while to dissipate. And particularly where there's no possibilities of overtaking. So I put it to you that just simply summing the number of traffic movements is oversimplifying the case. These are traffic movements are individually more disruptive than quite a lot of ordinary domestic cars. My second point is that we are, in a wider context, concerned the move from locally sourced, naturally arising residues and wastes towards specifically grown feedstocks brought in from a distance. This undermines the rationale of this type of energy recovery in terms of net carbon reduction. The additional carbon costs of fertilizers, crop management, and transport of bulky feedstocks over distance, not to mention the opportunity costs of land lost to food production, tend to tip the balance from net carbon zero reduction to net carbon zero addition. It rather depends, I suppose, how seriously Dorset Council is about doing the sums on attaining net carbon zero. But I hope you'll recognise the subtlety of this distinction. Bringing feedstocks in from a distance can actually be working against your target rather than in favour of it. If I may, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of quotes from this book, Global Warming by Professor Sir John Horton, who got a Nobel Prize for that work. In discussing this type of plant, he acknowledges the attraction of biomass energy, but points to the relatively low efficiency of conversion of solar energy to biomass, meaning that the amount of land required for significant energy production is large if feedstocks are to be grown specifically for that purpose and brought in over distance. The ideal energy crop would have high yields and low inputs of energy, which tends to rule out annual grasses such as maize, and points to slow rotation coppice willow, or better still, put solar panels on the land that's growing the crop. It's a hard equation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. So, Eleanor, are there any points there that you wish to address?
Sorry, the mute. Just one point I just wanted to note was that all the feedstock source sites are working farms, so they are rotating their crops between providing feedstock to the Rainbow Farm plant. They're also rotating to food crops as well. So you know, they're not solely supplying this plant. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Eleanor. Technical questions from members? Councillor David Took, Cranbourne.
Thank you, Chair. There's quite a lot of traffic movements, no escaping that. One of the problems we get where there's lots of traffic movements, and this applies to logistics hubs and all sorts of places, is queuing for access. So I just wondered if there are any queuing arrangements that might affect the highway. So if tractors, trailers, trucks, HGVs are queuing to get access to the site, do they queue at the moment? Can they queue off-road? Is there adequate space for them to do that without impacting on the road? So that's the first question, I think.
Did you catch that, Eleanor?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Chair. I would direct attention to the proposed delivery and servicing plan, which it is managing exactly that, ensuring that they don't have queues, you know, along Bridport Road, that the deliveries will be coming in regularly, but they won't be backing up. There is a lot of there is a reasonable amount of land on the site, so you know, I would expect that tractors could be coming into the site, unloading, and there would still be some room for, say, the one behind it or in front of it. But yes, I think the delivery and service plan, that is one of the main issues, is to manage that issue. Thank you.
So there will be no queuing on the road, and that can be enforced and monitored. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would have thought that if we were to receive a complaint of that nature, that the delivery and servicing plan has got the wording in it, that we could then work with the operator to address any concerns.
Okay, not quite as clear-cut as I'd hoped, but thank you.
Councillor David Taylor, Charminster, St Mary's.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor David Taylor. One of my parishes is Stinsford, actually, which has been raised today regarding the problems of the travel, which we're talking about, regarding the travelling of the vehicles through the Stinsford area itself as well. Now, my question is to yourself, if you don't mind. Sorry, I've got my name. Is the fact that you're talking about the traffic volume control of coming to the digester to fill and deliver. Now, We know, as living in Dorchester, that on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday and the Monday, you can guarantee the A35 will be blocked from 3 o'clock until probably 12 o'clock on Monday. So therefore, the traffic movement of your vehicles to get to the digester is going to be very rapidly impeded, which means we do have knowledge and we have proof that they're using the side roads, especially like Cuckoo Lane, Slyers Lane, to get across the Bockhampton Bridge, to go around the back roads to the digester. Now, we know this. We've had the recognize on that one there. So therefore, my question is, of the increase in traffic which you are looking for to put onto the roads to deliver the crops, how are you going to regulate the deliverers to make absolutely sure they don't go through the villages, because they're creating absolute mayhem? When they go through the villages, they literally block the villages off. They can't move. And you've seen the size of the vehicles. The tractor and the trailer equates to virtually a HGV. They're that big. And the width of them is the entire width of the lane. So that's my question to you, say, how are you going to control this to make sure they adhere to it and that we have absolute guarantee they don't use the side roads and stick to the routes that you have stated today? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Eleanor?
I would just like to respond, Chair, that to me it suggests that it's a bigger problem and not just this site in particular.
No, it's all over.
And today we're only looking at this site in particular. So,
Look at delivery.
but again, it would be the operator working with their delivery drivers. And we are also talking about it being within a specific harvest period of sort of 2 to 4 weeks, twice a year, where they would be taking the peak deliveries. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary? Yeah, you can come back.
Thank you, Chair. It's the fact is that there seems to be no, they're saying they're going to control it, but how? That's my question. It's not being controlled. You know, the things they're delivering, if they find the roads blocked, they will go alternative routes, which creates mayhem for the villages around Dorchester. I'm not specifically just addressing Stinsford as well. I'm looking at other parishes which actually been affected. The A35, the A37 is a very, very busy road. And when it comes to peak periods, they cannot get through. And that's what I'm trying to understand, is how are you going to make sure that they don't use the side roads and affect the villages? That's my question.
Eleanor?
I don't really have anything further to add from the presentation or what I've already said. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Craig Monks.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Craig Monks, Bedminster Ward. I actually have some sympathy with my colleague, because I think actually the answer to the last question is there is no guarantees and there is no way of enforcement. But I also understand that obviously that we need to get some deliveries to the site. So I guess my technical question is, and it's a little bit of a stab in the dark really, is there additional controls or possibly amendments we can consider to try and strengthen traffic movement, to maybe suggest more sort of backing up a vehicle? I'm very conscious that I'm sort of looking at you now. This is an unusual situation where you can't actually answer these questions, but whether... Of course, Chair. Sorry, I'm picking up bad habits from my colleague. So the question for the officer, I suppose, just for clarity, is there any amendments or conditions we could consider to try and strengthen storage of vehicles to either to or from the site on the site? Because as I'm sure many colleagues occasionally frequent the McDonald's restaurant and other fast food chains are available, that is a very busy area, and I would feel more content if we could consider some conditions that would try and keep those vehicles off those roads. But I'll see what the officer says to that.
So, Eleanor, you've made clear the vehicle movement plan and that that's conditioned. I'm not sure if Councillor Monks wishes to address a specific part of the vehicle movement plan that you think needs to be more robust.
Yeah, I think it needs to be more robust. I question whether the current plan is really fit for purpose because there's too many variables that we can't really control. So if we're making the considerations as put in front of us today, it's difficult to support if I look at that plan and think, well, that's not going to work. So I wonder if there's other options that could be considered to strengthen the current plan as is. Because as was previously asked and not quite answered, I understand why the officer can't answer it, but the lack of the answer to the previous question, technical question, is why I would like to try and seek some strengthening of that condition.
Eleanor, is there anything that you feel the current movement plan addresses that's been missed by members, or is there anything else that you could suggest as an optional condition that would meet members' needs?
One thing I would like to just remind members is that there is no highway objection to this application. So in terms of movements, there is no highway safety concern. I mean, in terms of maybe strengthening the delivery and servicing plan, it might be something we need to work with the applicant with. But in terms of sort of providing a condition that would satisfy the committee, it's not something I have right in front of me at this point.
Okay, Councillor Bolwell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got a question for the officer, but I will preface it by the fact that I am aware that conditions must be reasonable and enforceable. So I really don't want to go down a blind alley on this one. But and I think I know the answer to the question actually. But can we reasonably limit the location of sources of feedstock? You've done a 10-mile zone there. I saw that. I don't see how we could do it and say you're only allowed to use these farms. I think obviously there's going to be a time when they're going to have to use different farms. So I don't see that we can actually put a condition in there to say it can only be a certain distance away from the anaerobic digester. But I'm going to ask the question anyway, possibly for the benefit of my colleagues as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, we already have that condition in there, the condition 4, like you've said. I mean, we have discussed that with the applicant. I think they have concerns about that generally because they do regular contracts where they will enter into a contract with a particular farm, and I think there is a bit of a self-limiting, in terms of the distance from Rainbow Farm. It's going to get to a point where it's going to be too far to actually be economically viable for them to bring the feedstock in. So, and I have been, the applicant has suggested that the sort of 10 to 15 mile is a limit in itself. So in terms of maybe, I mean, that's why I have recommended the condition that any new farms should be within 10 miles of the plant. And so that would be enforceable as well.
Thank you, Eleanor. Councillor Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis.
Thank you, Chairman. My question probably again is not one that the officer can answer, but on page 114, the mention of the site operations manager could advise on the requirements of the delivery and servicing plan. And sorry, the next paragraph would the service DSP manager would be required to reorganize deliveries. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on what that actually involves. Are they able to negotiate with the farmers to reduce the number of loads on a particular day if you know there are others coming in from the other direction? It was just to clarify, what was controllable given this problem of the vehicles? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Chair, is that okay for me to answer?
Please do.
Yes, so I think the first point to make is that the harvest is when we cannot control when the harvest is at, it's the best time to harvest. It is based upon weather conditions, the conditions being right for the harvest. So just with that point in mind, you would expect that because of the conditions, a lot of the source sites will want to be harvesting at similar times. But bearing that in mind, through discussions with the applicant and through the delivery and servicing plan, I think the idea is that they will be in contact with each of the farms who want to deliver on a particular day, and they will have some control in terms of spacing out deliveries and in terms of timings to make sure that they don't get everyone turning up at the same time. And also another point to consider is that this isn't just a business hours sort of 9 to 5 operation. It can I think they tend to start harvesting very early in the morning, and they really do want to get on with it, and they will work until it's done. So I think it's daylight and night hours. So that would be in the summertime. That would be up until sort of 8. In May, it's probably about 8 o'clock. Probably earlier in the autumn. And I hope that helps. Thank you.
David Taylor, Chelmsford St Mary.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the thing is that as we are all kind of portraying here, there is a concern with regarding the actual movement of the vehicles and traffic through the systems, villages and side roads. The reference to the highways you recommended, of course the highways are fit for purpose for the vehicles, that's what they're built for. But the thing is that the side roads are not built for this type of quality of stock, and strength and size of vehicles, shall we say. So therefore, I would ask for a recommendation, if possible, to actually liaise with the parish councils, actually, to say, is there a way we can come to a partnership with this to actually make it a bit more easy to deliver? Because they are going to need to use the side roads sometimes. Hence, an example, last Friday, there was a car crash pile-up by the Gingerbread Cafe, and it shut the road for 2 hours. So therefore, there has got to be some liaison with the communities and parishes so that they can help them with their business, not actually hinder it. That's my concern. I just hope they can take it on board as a condition.
Eleanor.
So just to clarify, is it a condition that, an additional condition that may be required that we could work on through delegating the decision to officers, or is it something that we would need to defer for and bring it back to another committee?
Are you happy for the wording to be put together for officers? It's going to need a technical response. Okay, thank you. Councillor Pete Roper, Portland.
Thank you, Chair. Pete Roper, Portland Ward. Thank you. It's a question sort of based regarding the harvest sort of periods. I mean, it's been suggested, that there are two distinct sort of short periods when the harvest will have an impact in, with the transport of the sort of feedstocks into this plant. But of course, the harvest periods, they are variable, and they can sort of take place at sort of slightly different times of year, and perhaps sort of for longer. So my sort of question is, does this need to be sort of taken into account in the traffic plan? Because obviously this could have a bigger impact, particularly on the roads through that area, particularly during the holiday season.
Eleanor?
Good question. Sorry, I'm not quite sure how to answer that one.
Okay, thank you. Members. Go ahead. Councillor David Taylor, Chancellor St Mary.
Chair, I'd like to defer because in fact I think the wording is wrong. I think that the conditions today cannot be agreed upon because there's too much dispute about what's actually really going on with the parish councils and the roads and the systems. And I don't think there's an adequate transport system being in place, and I don't think they've been taking their questions into account. So I reckon defer so we can come back to this and discuss.
Thank you very much. Can I just consult with legal? So I'm just going to adjourn for 5 minutes just to see if we can accommodate some wording at this time that would satisfy before I accept a deferral. You certainly can.
Just to bring to attention the second from bottom, in order to address immediate concerns with vehicle movements, a delivery and servicing plan has to be submitted by the applicant. This has not been submitted. All we are seeing is that the possibility of when they might possibly deliver and what times of the year. We haven't got an absolute bang-on correct times of the year. So therefore saying they're restricted route, management of deliveries. It says it all there, and we're getting this thinking that it's not happening.
Thank you. So I'm going to adjourn for 5 minutes and we'll come back to you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just a point of order. Am I allowed to stretch legs and walk around a bit?
Thank you.
Oops.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm missing something here, but on page 114, for me, it says quite clearly that the B3159 through Martinstown and Winterbourne Steepleton is a restricted route. It's secured as part of the delivery and servicing plan. I think the issue is that, from what others are saying, is that sometimes the delivery plan is not being stuck to. So as far as I'm concerned, I think it's fairly clear here what... Sorry, go on. Okay. All right, sorry.
Let me ask the question.
Okay. It just, yeah. Sorry, it seems as if it's already stated to me.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Councillor Monks, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Question for the officer, a very short preamble, which might help us along. I think a number of colleagues have similar concerns around the I can't remember what you call it now. Amendments? No. Conditions. And in particular, how reasonable they are within things like enforcement. Indeed, reading the traffic management plan, there are some sections which I'm sure colleagues will refer to in debate that offer some concern around the use of local roads. So my question is, would it be possible to add an additional condition that relates to delivery times in the day? Because I think my theory is that if we were to have a condition that deliveries were only between the hours of, for example, 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., that would allay concerns around traffic, in particular rush hour traffic, and could then also make the other conditions more reasonable. Because if roads were to be used to store vehicles, for example, it's not so busy. And ultimately, there's 3 tractors and some trailers parked up in a side lane waiting to deliver at 9 o'clock at night. It's not going to have the same level of impact on the local villages as it would at 8 o'clock in the morning. So my question is, would that additional condition be reasonable and also help to make the other conditions more reasonable? Thank you.
Eleanor, do we still have you?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Lovely.
Coming through. Yes, there is an operating hours condition already suggested, so that's condition 12. And at the moment it does say excluding harvest times of the feedstocks. So that is something that we could consider, but I would like to speak to the applicant about that. It's not something that I'd want to just, well, I mean, that would be the ideal. Like I say, it's already there. It's potential to be tweaked so that there is a restriction on the harvest times deliveries.
Thank you. Eleanor, would you like to have that conversation now? We can adjourn so that you can have a conversation with the applicant if he'd be happy to have that conversation. So I don't think the applicant wants to have that conversation. Okay. So I'll adjourn for 10 minutes. If you want to you can take the conversation out of the room if you wish to. Eleanor, he's going to call you by phone.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome back from the adjournment. Eleanor, I believe you have something to address committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've spoken to the agent. We've discussed the possibility of removing the first part of the condition 12. My concern is that harvest does need to be harvested when it's ready, and it does need to have some flexibility in terms of being able to bring in the feedstock. I think the fact that we've had to adjourn a few times, I apologise for that because I'm online, and I think that has exacerbated this. But I think probably the best thing would be to suggest that we defer so I can discuss this properly with the applicant, not under the pressure of planning committee.
Okay, thank you, Eleanor. So I make a proposal from the chair that we defer. Do I have a seconder? Yeah, so it's Councillor David Taylor, Chelmsford St Mary seconds that. So simple show of hands. Those in favour of deferral? Just let Democratic Services see that. Yeah, those against? And Belinda. Thank you. This item is deferred for a later time. So we're on the home run now. Where's my... I don't think I have. I haven't got that on my papers. Thank you very much. Excellent. Do we have any urgent items for this committee? No? Thank you. Any exempt business? No, that's fine. So meeting closed, 12:42. Thank you very much.